Hello everyone, the purpose of this recording is to introduce you to our second semester Unit 1, Climate versus Weather. The main question you need to consider is, what are the differences, and are there differences between climate and between weather? Now, some things to consider before we begin this unit and you review the unit is, what do you know about weather and climate? What do you want to know? And lastly, what have you learned for some self-reflection? Now, our main differences, as we know, between climate and weather is climate are the long-term weather patterns that we see in a specific area, whereas weather is the current state of weather that's happening, as you remember, in our troposphere. And of course, there's always short-term variations amongst these as well. Now, our essential vocabulary for this unit includes climate, windward, leeward, orthographic, rain shadow, and urban heat islands. And I've sent you a list and some wonderful illustrations that were provided by some of your classmates that you can add along with your definitions to help you study for upcoming quizzes and examinations. Now, climatology or climatologists are studying the Earth's climate and the factors that affect the past and future climatic changes, and that's what we're also doing in Earth science. If you're looking, by the way, be brilliant. That's our goal for this semester, is being brilliant. When you're in Unit 1, and you go to Unit 1.02, Climate versus Weather, there are some, have your mastery map, and focusing upon this mastery map will be very helpful for you in understanding the interrelationship between climate and the differences of precipitation, winds, and mountains, and then also the role that temperature plays and how bodies of water, latitude, altitude, and ocean currents affect that as well. So our main goals for this unit are going to be defining climate and applying it to a familiar region and explaining how weather and climate involve energy transfer in the atmosphere. Things to focus upon, that again is to remember that weather and climate are two separate events, and in the previous lessons we've already learned a lot about weather and that we know it's short-term atmospheric conditions and to a particular region, and that climate is often confused with weather. So it's really important that you delineate between the two of those. And temperature and precipitation and the amounts that are received in a particular area are what determine the climate of a particular region. And if you just go along on these, toggle on these little notes, and it's talking about showing the differences between the local weather and climates between Florida and Montana. Now we know that there are several factors that influence temperature and precipitation, and those include things such as elevation, influence the temperature of a region, and this is a really great interactive that's showing you there you are hiking up a mountain peak and the changes in temperature as you're hiking up from the bottom to the top of the peak. And then lastly, as you're traveling from north of the equator or south of the equator, and the events of temperature as well. We know that ocean plays a huge role in determining the temperature of a region, as coastal areas are much cooler than your interior areas, and this is a wonderful little interactive where you can look at the average temperatures, same latitude, different temperatures from a coastal community versus an interior temperate area like Kansas. Again, ocean currents have a significant effect on climate here in Edinburgh, Scotland. Look at their December average as opposed to Moscow, which is not near the coast, negative 24 degrees. Much difference between coastal community and between interior community. And we know that, of course, ocean currents affect Gulf streams as well, and different currents, and that we know, like for instance here in the United States, the west coast of the United States, we know it's cooler than we'd expect for the latitude it's at, and that's reason because of the California current. It's that cold water that moves along the west coast. That's why that area is cooler than you'd expect. Again, precipitation determines, a region's annual precipitation determines if it has wet or a dry climate. Again, here's the Great Lakes region in North America, and that the winds and the presence or absence of mountains or large bodies of water determine how wet or dry it is. Remember, the amount of moisture an air mass can hold determines the amount of precipitation that will fall in an area as well. And you're also going to be reviewing the prevailing winds and the air masses. Gives you an example of what's happening in North Africa, that the large air masses are moving over land, not water, so they're not picking up the water molecules that would coalesce over a condensation nuclei, thus having a precipitation event. We know that mountains also have an effect on where precipitation will fall or not fall, and as a prevailing wind is moving, perhaps a moist laden air up the mountain front, and as it rises it cools, and then the moisture drops out of the air and you have a precipitation event like rain or snow, and we call this an orographic lift. We know that also that there's the windward side of the mountain as the prevailing winds are pushing against the side of the mountain, and then we know that there's a leeward side that's more dry. We call it the rain shadow. And think of our own Sierra Nevada range in North America, where the windward side portion is much more humid and moist and more vegetation, and the leeward side, which is in Nevada, is definitely more dry and arid and a desert environment. So again, a region's weather is consistent with its climate. Climate's affected by temperature and precipitation. Precipitation by prevailing winds and mountains, and temperature is affected by, am I near or far away from a body of water, what is the latitude of the area, the altitude, and lastly the ocean currents present or not present. This is a review for 1.02, and I hope that you enjoy this section on climate versus weather. It's fascinating. I'm sending you some additional resources for this unit, which are including a NASA site on what is the difference between climate and weather, and there are some fantastic links on the bottom of this site. Just want to share them with you for some supplemental information. And if you ever want to study climate and weather, there are some reasons why and who does and why and how they contribute to the level of knowledge that we have, and what the history of NASA is as well. Here's some additional links here on the bottom. Again, for a summary, our essential vocabulary include climate, windward, leeward, orographic lifting, rain shadow, and urban heat centers. You can contact me for additional and any assistance. Please don't forget to take your diagnostic exam for Unit 1 to help you assess where you're at in your knowledge. I have an open office hour every day from 8:30 to 9:30, and then our small group sessions from 10 to 12. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope this helps you on your journey through earth science this semester.